Will two elite commits, one MLB draft looming? Will JoJo and Jacob Parker choose the pros or suit up in maroon for Mississippi State?
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Jaron Spor. I'm a national college football writer at Athlon Sports. That's Landon McBride. We've got a baseball show for you today to start off your week. Baseball had a massive portal addition. We kind of talked about it a little bit last week. I say massive more for the depth reasons, but yes, it was a big addition for that. We'll break down that next, and then we're going to talk about our top dog of the week and who deserves that honor. But we got to talk about the Parker brothers to kick things off. The MLB draft is coming up this week, actually. First round was yesterday, and that kind of kicked things off. And so will the Parker brothers decide to go pro? Are they going to come back and go to school? Like that's been the biggest question mark.
Yeah, it's been a huge question mark, and especially with both of them, definitely, but JoJo a little bit more than Jacob, just because, when you looked, everything you read prior to the draft was his floor was pick 12. When that is someone's floor, something typically has to go wrong in negotiations for them to decide to go to school instead of going pro. Jacob has been more of like a second, third round pick type of guy, still very high ceiling, great power swing. But then it gets a little more interesting about money, because especially now with NIL, if he could make as much money, maybe he comes back and he wants to be that like top 10 pick in 2 years. So there's a lot of moving parts. And their comments, they've made a lot of comments.
Yeah.
Nothing set in stone. Where I get drafted doesn't necessarily mean I'm going pro. I might want to go to school. And they mentioned a lot about how they would love to play together more because they have obviously done it their whole lives. And they know it's very unlikely they're drafted by the same MLB team.
Right.
So I honestly think if Jacob maybe falls a little bit more for whatever reason, it happens. MLB draft is weird. So there's always a chance he could fall. And if he falls, maybe JoJo's like, you know what? I'll still be a top 10 pick in 2 years. Let me go play with my brother a little bit more.
Well, and you mentioned some of the comments they made. MLB.com did a great piece on the brothers. It was Anthony Castrovince, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Now, just take it a grain of salt. Some of these quotes, this happened before the draft, so it didn't know where they were going to end up being taken yesterday. But they kind of were talking about they interviewed both brothers, but also the dad. And for those who don't know, the dad was hurt. His name's Joseph. They call him Jop Parker, but he was hurt when he was 16 years old, and now he's he's fractured his cervical spinal cord while making a tackle in a football game, and so he's been in a wheelchair ever since. And so it's a really cool story about just how they've overcome all these things, and it's a sad story too because they talk about how they would love to have him throw them BP and stuff like that, and he's just not able to do any of that. But if you read some of their comments, they have some interesting stuff to say. And you mentioned that, is it a foregone conclusion that they're just going to go to the MLB draft, or JoJo's going to go and Jacob's going to go to Mississippi State? No, but one of the questions they asked him was about that reality in terms of y'all might not be playing anymore together. Because one could go pro, one could stay at Mississippi State. They both could go pro, and it'd be different franchises. And so they were asked about that, and Jacob just flat out said, "We're ready for it." So it's something that they both have, at least started to prepare for.
Yeah, well, when you're two brothers who are both absolutely like elite at what you do, like the incomes. You don't, unless you're the Morris twins in the NBA, you're not going to continue to play together forever. But that story, The Athletic, Sam Blum, who's one of my favorite MLB writers, did a huge story on them and their father. It was great. So if you have an Athletic subscription, go hunt that down. But I don't think either of them are here come fall. I think it would be shocking if they do, but I do think there's a slightly higher percentage of Jacob making his way than JoJo. I think the odds of both of them coming are like 0.01%.
Right. Especially after the results of the draft from last night. I just don't see both coming back to school. Like you said, if one was to come, I say back, they haven't been at Mississippi State yet, but deciding to go to college.
Back to Mississippi.
Yeah. I feel like if one were to come back, like you said, it's Jacob, obviously. I just don't see. I guess there's always a chance. Especially when Jacob was drafted, or when JoJo was drafted, I just don't see him coming to Mississippi State. Now, we'd love for them both to come to Mississippi State because you want to talk about a team next year. We've talked about it many times. They would have a great chance at a World Series if both decided to come to Mississippi State, and they would be World Series national champion contenders for the next 3 years with both of them.
Yeah.
And if JoJo comes to college and plays well, he's looking at possibly being a top 5, maybe the top pick. Although pitchers a lot of times get that top pick, but it just depends on the season. Obviously, we saw Jackson Holiday just 2 years ago go number 1. He's not a pitcher, so you never know exactly who's going to go number 1, but it would put him up in those conversations at least if he played well and they won a national championship, or heck, if they won 2 national championships, they'd be up there. But I don't see JoJo coming to Mississippi State.
Me either. I mean, but a shortstop with that swing is always going to be in a contention for a top 5 pick, especially if he has a little bit of college success behind him. That was something I watched their BP when they did the whole MLB combine, and both of those guys, that swing is real. And even as freshmen, I mean, we've talked about how there's not really a hole, but kind of like half a hole, I guess, kind of at shortstop. You don't feel great about it, but there's definitely guys who could do it. You plug him there, that would be unreal. Jacob, he'd find his way. I mean, with that swing, he's fighting his way in there, whether it's DHing or, a little bit of time now, wherever he is, because he plays a couple different places, so he could work out but you had those guys. This lineup gets so deep, so long, it'd be a grind. And I mean, I'd love to see it, but it doesn't feel like either of them are coming at this point. Earlier, when we first kind of started talking about him, I was like, I think Jacob might, but now I'm like, no, I don't think either make it to here.
Yeah, and the thing to kind of watch is, in the past, obviously if there was this just absolute special talent and it wasn't just potential, this high school guy was drafted on, you would see it. But a lot of times, even if you were drafted high out of high school, you were still going to spend a year or 2 years or 3 years in the minors, depending on, how well you progressed. Now we're seeing guys in that first year get brought up. I mean, I mentioned Jackson Holiday. He got brought up that first year. Didn't play a ton, but he got brought up for like a game or 2. And then obviously this year he's played a lot more. And so you're seeing that happen here and there a lot more than what you previously would see.
Yeah, I mean, it's mainly with guys who have played in college, because Jackson did spend 2 full years in the minors. He had a little cup of coffee in the majors that second year. So he was pretty much in there. Yeah, you're not going to see high school guys, I mean, unless it's Ken Griffey Jr. Make it.
Facts. Yeah.
Make their way up. So.
Or was it Bryce? Didn't Bryce Harper play his?
No, he ended up at 19, but he graduated.
I remember he was very young when he got brought up, but I couldn't remember exactly.
He graduated high school at 16, spent 2 years at a JUCO, so he still spent a year. But he was very young. People are becoming much more aggressive with the promotions through the minors. I mean, you can see it like with the Red Sox with Christian Campbell. They drafted him, they pushed him through 3 levels of the minors last season. Things like that. And then there's talk of, and I'm blanking on his name, the pitcher from LSU. They're talking about him possibly being in an MLB lineup by the end of this year. So people are getting much more aggressive. And with JoJo's swing, if he acclimates well, I wouldn't be shocked to see him on a major league roster by the time he's 20.
Yeah. I mean, that's where he's progressing for sure. But one of the things that was kind of always the perk was you could go to college over going to the minors. And we talked about this too. NIL has now made it where you could still do that, and you'll probably make more money going to college than you will in the minors. Whereas before, it was kind of
be better.
Yeah, before it was kind of, the living conditions weren't going to be good in the minors, but you were going to make money and you weren't going to in college. So that's now, obviously, NIL has changed that, where now you can make more money in college than you would in minors. So we have seen guys say, hey, I would rather do my development in college, make more money. The living conditions are better. And then knowing, like, and we've seen several other guys get drafted number one, then immediately, or get drafted high out of college, get drafted high, not out of high school. And then they're playing that first year in the major leagues, and then, so on and so forth, what happened. So they could very well say, hey, the Parker brothers could say, hey, I want to go to college for 3 years instead of doing some minor league stuff, get paid more, living conditions are better, and then get drafted. And then if I'm good enough, play that first year, eventually in the major leagues.
Yeah. So it's just hard to know where someone's head is, especially when you get into like that third, fourth round, kind of like second, third, maybe fourth round, kind of where we think Jacob is going to end up. And if he weighs the money, because some guys, it's kind of like, well, if it's close and I can then limit my time riding in buses, sharing an apartment with way more people than should be living in an apartment, which is what happened in the minor leagues, then some people are going to jump at that. So, but then some people are like, no, I believe in myself. I'm going to get through these minors quickly, and they go that route. So we're in a wait and see mode with these guys, but I would be shocked if either of them, actually plays baseball for Mississippi State, which sucks, but good for them.
Yeah, for sure. And so we'll see what ends up happening now it's all eyes on the contract negotiations, because that will be obviously a big part in deciding what ends up happening with them. It is crazy because it seriously feels like Jackson Holiday was taken number one just 2 years ago, but it was 2022.
Yeah,
that's how long it's been.
His brother is now.
is up there, but it's because he's still like 21 years old or something like that. So Jackson,
another brother coming.
Yeah, so it's crazy to think about that, because I seriously thought he was drafted last year number one, and it was 3 years ago or whatever. But
time flies.
All right, coming next, we got to talk about a portal addition that could make some differences to the Mississippi State squad. We'll talk about that coming up next.
We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. And my favorite thing about Gametime is the panoramic seat view. You can actually see the entire, your whole view from that seat before you buy the tickets. With games and concerts, that's so important. You don't want to spend all that money on tickets and not get the view you wanted or the view you thought you were getting when you purchased that. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay with no hidden fees. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Well, thanks for being Locked On Mississippi State, your first listen every single day, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Mississippi State added another transfer, and this is catcher Andrew Raymond. He's from George Mason. Last year was his freshman season. He played in 51 games, had 50 hits, batted .287, 5 home runs, 33 RBIs, had a slugging percentage of .431, and on base percentage of 39.3. So what is your thoughts on this addition? It's going to be more of a depth position for sure, and we've talked about several times they are so weak at catcher. They had to get some catchers in there.
Yeah, I think it's a good piece. I mean, like you mentioned, he was just a freshman. So I think this is a guy who you bring in, Kevin Milewski. I think that's your starter. So I think Andrew Raymond and Jackson Owen are the guys who are battling to be the backup catcher. And when you have someone like Raymond who has some experience, but still going to be here for a while, I think this was more Brian O'Connor and the staff liked him, got him in, and this is your catcher for the future. So, I mean, limited ABs, only 174, but 287 batting average with a little bit of pop. That's nothing to be mad at with a catcher, especially in limited time and as a freshman. So, he's definitely going to play some, but I wouldn't expect to see a ton of him this year. But I think this is a good piece long term.
Yeah, I actually even would expect him to kind of redshirt this year,
Yeah.
because he didn't redshirt last year. And Kevin Milewski is heading into his junior season. He obviously batted 303 and then had 16 home runs, 58 RBIs. Had a really good year. That's your starter, and he's going into his junior year. Whereas Jackson Owen, obviously he has a lot of experience too, because he played in the JUCO ranks and then was on Mississippi State's team last year. Didn't play as much, but was on the team last year. So I think he's a serviceable backup if, God forbid you had to throw him in there because of an injury. But I think this kind of pickup is a guy that, like you mentioned, he's the future of the position, because he is going to his sophomore season. That's why I would redshirt him, because he didn't redshirt last year. So he could be a redshirt sophomore going into Kevin's last season. And then you could possibly have 2 seasons of Andrew as your starter. Now, it obviously depends what else you do in the transfer portal, what you do in the high school ranks. But, it's crazy. Just like a month ago, there wasn't a catcher on roster.
The only catcher was, blanking on his last name, first name Sean, that I think he played like 5 games at catcher in his career or something. That was the only one on the roster. Now it's a deep position.
And that's because Jackson had entered the portal at that time. You hadn't signed Kevin yet. And then Jackson announced he was coming back. So, okay, you got a catcher on the roster. Then Kevin announces he transfers in, and then now Andrew transfers in as well. And so now you've got some depth at the position when just a month ago it looked very bleak.
Yeah, and I think this year is big it's going to be big about Andrew Raymond's development, whether it is he plays a little bit here and there or if he redshirts. Because if Milewski has the year he had last year, but in the SEC, and you have a catcher that's hitting 15 to 20 home runs with 300 batting average and playing good defense, that guy's getting drafted in the top 2 rounds, and he might go. If you have a guy putting up those kind of numbers, that offense at the catcher position is something that MLB teams look at. So if you have a guy who's putting up that kind of number, he might be gone. So, I mean, the Andrew Raymond pickup might be huge. Like, he could be your number 1 catcher next year. So, I mean, honestly, the 2026-27 season, not this fall. So, I mean, it's big. And I think he's a guy, good size at catcher, 6'1", about 220. I mean, 200, that's pretty good size for a good catcher. So, I like it. This is a good piece.
Yeah, it is. And as we mentioned, you had to add some depth to a position that was gutted earlier in the offseason, and that's exactly what you've done. And so that just shows kind of the prowess of Brian O'Connor, because he was able to, and shows how quickly you can change a position in the transfer portal, because both guys were able to quickly change things. In the portal. The team was able to change things in the portal and fix a position. And I think a lot of it is due to Brian O'Connor. Like Jackson Owen, for example, enters the portal. He had to be convinced to come back. And so there was something that Brian O'Connor said and talked about that got him to come back. And then Kevin Milewski, he was highly touted. A lot of people wanted him after the season he just had, but still he chose to come to Mississippi State. And then obviously Andrew Raymond now knows 2 guys are there with experience and says, you know what, I still want to go there. And so that says a lot. So yeah, I just think it speaks a lot to Brian O'Connor and who he is as a coach.
Yeah, and it also speaks to how he's already looking at, it's kind of like he fixed this year. Those first couple guys getting Aiden Teal, the Valencius brothers, all those guys, that fixes the roster for this upcoming season. Picking up guys like Andrew Raymond, that's starting to look at the future. He's already building his team for the next year, the next year after that. So it speaks to him as a person, as a coach, and his vision for what he's trying to build here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. All right, well, coming up next, we got to talk about our top dog of the week. Don't go anywhere. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, who is your top dog of the week?
Well, I'm kind of piggybacking off of the fact that we've had a very baseball-heavy show today, and I'm going to go with Brian O'Connor for a lot of the reasons we just mentioned. Not that long ago, we were all legitimately concerned about who the catcher would be for this team. And I know Andrew Raymond, not the highlight reel, headline grabbing type addition. Like I mentioned, it starts to show what he's trying to build here. And he's, added that. Catcher's now a strength. We were a little concerned about who might play shortstop. He went out and got a utility guy with experience at multiple positions, one of those primarily being shortstop. So he's really putting the finishing touches on what is an absolutely elite first transfer class. And a lot of those guys will be here beyond 1 year.
Yeah, that's obviously a really good one because of the work that he's done and getting these guys, convinced that they need to be here. And so I think that's obviously a big one. I've kind of gone back and forth on this one. I wouldn't. Could I go baseball and give props to the Parker brothers for the draft? And then obviously the draft finishes up. If you guys want to watch, finishes up later on today. I think 11:30 Eastern time, so 10:30 our time, I believe, is when it starts back up. I also went through some kind of source notes on some of the from the Maroon and White Daily. Went through some of the source notes on some of the football practices, and ultimately I was like, you know what, we have to give some kind of shout out. Let's give one to Zakari Tillman. Apparently he's doing really good in the offseason practices right now. Obviously, there's just not a lot that is happening, but because fall camp hasn't really got underway, but we got SEC Media Days this week, so that's another reason why I wanted to kind of go football, was to kind of preview SEC Media Days, which I believe it's the 16th when Mississippi State will be on. So that'll be Wednesday. So that will be something to keep an eye on. But yeah, he had 30 tackles last year, 3.5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. Apparently he's kind of taking a major step forward in the leadership role, while also, showing some improvement as well. And with how bad the defense was, you need that.
Yeah, you do. That's a good one. Yeah, there's going to be, I think coming out of Media Day, we're going to have a lot of very exciting things to talk about for both some demeanor of these players. We're going to get to see a little bit more of the guys who are there that, we haven't seen much of. Brendan Thompson. So we'll see some of him, like his personality shaping a little bit more, but still not a lot because he been injured a lot of his time here. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of Media Day. And Tillman is a very good one.
Yeah, we'll preview that. If it is July 16th, just trying to remember off the top of my head. Let's see if we can look up when Media Day is.
We've learned recently we're bad at dates, so
and Media Day is all week. So when is the actual appearance for Mississippi State is the question. It's like 14th through the 17th is the actual Media Day. 16th. That's what I thought it was. So obviously the 16th, that morning we'll preview it, and then Thursday, Friday we'll have what comes out of it and talk about that a little more. But tomorrow we got to talk about a recruit that we thought we had, but ultimately chose elsewhere. So we gotta break that down and where Mississippi State goes from there. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's episode. But thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out The Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Jaron. Check out my work over at Athlon Sports. That's Landon. Follow us, Locked On Mississippi State. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We post daily videos Monday through Friday, so check those out. Also, hit the like, subscribe, ring the bell to get notified anytime that we post any kind of videos. We're trying to get to the 1,000 subscriber mark by early in the college football season. We're up to 592 now. So since we started putting that out there, we've gained quite a bit of subscribers. So thank you guys. Thank you to the Everydayers who have been with us since we took over the account a few months back. So thank you to you guys. But until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.